Uh, well, it's interesting. There was some at the beginning. There was some thought about building a snake, and there was a snake built, I think, that was going to be practical that we could use some of the time, maybe. Um, and then there was the blue snake, of course, which you shoot so that the actors have something that is of a similar size to interact with when they need to do such a thing. Um, but the puppet snake, as it were, was not used a lot. It was all digital, really, all replaced.
That part where I think it was Paul Rudd's character, where he says wedding video and Jack Black says wedding film. I can tell you, I don't know how many times I've corrected that when I used to do that. That was just a nail on the head. Like I was like could not stop laughing because that was so accurate. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. My name is Jawad Mir. Today, my guest is Nigel Bluck, cinematographer of the film Anaconda, starring Jack Black. Anaconda is not really a remake or reboot of the mid 90s hit blockbuster starring Jennifer Lopez and John Voight and Ice Cube. And I do urge you to take a look at this film. It's very different from the original. The original one was thriller. This is very comedic. It has some crazy, outrageous scenes that don't make any sense, but at the same time, you cannot stop laughing. An excellent entertainer. It's been a while since I've seen a good comedy the way it used to be in the 90s. Jack Black really delivered a phenomenal performance. Everybody, and there's some hidden cameos as well from the original film. Nigel Bluck, I had the pleasure of having him earlier this year on the live action version of Lilo and Stitch. So it was a pleasure talking to him again. We dived into lighting, we dived into the funny sequences, we dived into the challenges that they had during the production, which parts were the set, which were not, etc., and where they shot, making it look like it was the Amazon rainforest. So without further ado, here's my conversation with cinematographer Nigel Bluck. Had you seen the original Anaconda before you were even asked to come on board on this?
Yeah, sure. I think most of us had. It was never something that really lived with me, but I really trust Tom and his and Kevin and their point of view and these things, and they have a great way of uh, looking at these things in a different light, maybe.
Right.
Populist wise, it was something that's had so much resonance with people. So many people have seen it, So it's always a dangerous thing to go back down that road, but. Uh, It was nice. I think it was at a time where we all need a laugh in this world, and it was just trying to do that and create an entertaining adventure vehicle. The film we started out trying to make was more of a horror comedy, and just the way it evolved with everyone involved, it was more like a straight down the line comedy. But that's okay. Yeah, still has some of the horror elements, I think.
Yeah, and I appreciated the comedy because, especially nowadays, there's rarely any comedies, if anything at all. And
Mhm.
when you're doing watching comedy, you gotta just put everything, all your logic and everything, sort of out the window and just enjoy it. I'll tell you one thing that really personally resonated with me. So between 2008 and 2017, my wife and I used to run this company on wedding cinematography.
Mhm.
And that part where I think it was Paul Rudd's character, where he says wedding video and Jack Black says wedding film. I can tell you, I don't know how many times I've corrected that when I used to do that. That was just a nail on the head. Like I was like could not stop laughing because that was so accurate, so accurate. Just That was just a comment. It was a personal thing. But tell me how. First of all, where did you guys shoot? Let's start talking about that because the locations were incredible. I thought everything was fantastic in there. I mean, I'm sure there were some studios and sets, but I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, we shot in Queensland in Australia, which personally I enjoyed because I've spent a lot of time shooting there over the years. I used to do a lot of stuff down there because I'm from New Zealand. So I knew a lot of the crew. It felt very familiar. The landscape was something that I was really familiar with and comfortable in, and the light especially. So that was a great a win for the production, I think. The great thing about uh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Um, the great thing about Queensland is it has a river called the Tweed, which is very close, and it's the river you see in the film, and it's quite similar to a lot of parts of the Amazon. So that was some, Tom really wanted to shoot the film practically and build a boat and put it on the water and photograph it in that way rather than do it. Traditionally, when you shoot a film like this, you would build a set on a backlog and shoot it all against blue and shoot plates. Um, that's not what we did. We shot, so because the film had day component and night component, we decided to shoot all the day work on the river to sell the authenticity of being there, as it were. And then when it
Right.
came to night work, which is much harder to achieve on the water because you need a lot more large scale lighting, we decided to do that in a studio. So we built part of the boat in a studio, shot it against blue. I then went and shot a whole lot of plates, which I did actually day for night, so you can actually see the landscape and the river, and we dropped those in behind the set in our studio, and the rest came together in post. So it meant we didn't have to tell jokes at night, which I'm never a fan of trying to make humor at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it was good on the actors, good for our schedule, good for the lighting budget. And I think the result is good. I'm really happy with, we knew we could afford and we're aiming to heighten reality a little bit, especially in terms of the night work. So I was looking for something that was based in realism, but still had an accent to it, if you will, visual accent that would work with the comedy and the content.
Nice. And one of the things I truly appreciated was because it did feel to me was Amazon, like the way the original one was. I don't know where the original one was shot, but it just seemed very,
It
similar
was.
location. Yeah,
Yeah.
similar locations and whatnot. And I was watching that scene at the end when, Jack Black's character, they're putting the squirrel in his mouth.
Mm.
And I'm just thinking in my head, like, how the hell did the crew actually film that entire sequence without bursting out laughing? Because it's just one of those things that you want to be disgusted with, but at the same time, he's not dead, right? And you're just and he does it so executes it so properly. So were there any moments, whether it was that or anything else, where the whole work kind of ethic went out the window because the humor that was kicking in?
Yeah, there were several moments. I mean, Jack and Paul and Steve and Eva and Tandua, they're an amazing crew. And because it's a four-hander and the jokes are often scripted, but then it just evolves into this continuum, there was a lot of moments where people were laughing and cracking up, and the actors falling apart in the moment as well. Um, in terms of that's the boar scene we call it, with Jack's got the boar in his back and the squirrel in his mouth.
Yeah,
Definitely one of those moments when everyone was like, this is hilarious. So, um, and it's hard doing those things because the snake's obviously not there. Nothing's there except from the actor and the notion of what's behind them. So,
right.
um, Jack is very good he's a very well um, practiced actor in performing with what's not there. And creating those stakes and those emotions, even though he's working with a vacuum. So all kudos to him for that.
What was your favorite scene or part, or an experience of filming a scene, or a favorite scene in the film that you always sort of reflect back to?
I'd say the swamp scene at night is probably my favorite visual scene.
Hmm.
That was always going to be really challenging, but it was an amazing location that was actually a water-filled swamp. So again, kudos for the actors to actually get in there and be in there. Remember, this is Australia and there are plenty of real snakes around. And it was fun to light, and I think the performances were fantastic. And that was for me tonally in the movie. That was what I was. That is the film. I think that is the humor of the film. These characters going through these slight existential crises in a moment and taking the world very seriously, and it's undoing itself at the same time. So you got these two characters. One of them is living through this crisis, and the other one is Paul is kind of falling apart and just running off in the background. That's very much Tom and Kevin's work or Irv. That is what they do. That these two different energies happening in the same frame and characters bouncing off each other for it.
Yeah, and that swamp scene, I will say, I'm glad you brought it up, was beautifully lit. It almost felt like an extremely dramatic film, even though it was not. But I was wondering about the actors because the fact that it's in Australia and Australia has like a huge, bugs and snakes. How do you even go into that water and perform and think at the same time, is there something moving around my leg? I mean, that's crazy.
I mean, we always had snake. We always have on films in these places snake wranglers and a lot of precautions are taken, right? The place
But
has been,
still,
but still, it's there. And the great some of the great, Tom puts his waders on and gets in the water with them to, and there's a lot of crew there all in it for it. So I'm not diminishing what they did, but we do a lot to try and create a comfort zone for them,
right?
and there's always a plan B, of course, in case that all falls apart. Like for example, in that case, we were planning that. Listen, if this falls apart, we'll do it with the doubles and the wides, and then we had a parallel set next door that was dry that we could cover the closer work if we came to a point where people were starting to freak out. But it didn't happen. Kudos to the actors. They were like, no, that's fine. We'll continue here, which is great for me because all my equipment was in one place and wouldn't been a deal to push it over to somewhere else. But yeah, that was a great scene. I loved some of the resulting wise. I really liked some of the day for night work on the boat and how that worked with a set. I was very happy with that. I was happy with where we came to with being able to work on the water in a pretty unfussy way. The problem with working on the water is what you see the audience is just the boat and the actors, but
Yeah,
what's out the sides is insane. I mean, the flotilla of boats you have to manage the crew, manage the comfort of the actors, manage ferrying equipment back and forth, manage controlling the light around that vessel. Can become a massive thing. But well, again, kudos to the Australian production and the crew there. We managed to scale it down to something very manageable, very flexible, which is what it always needs to be on the water. And we did something quite unique in that we actually built a crane on top of the boat that could support lights or cameras so we could be our own entity. Often in those situations, you have the vessel, the hero vessel, and you have another boat or another boat with a light and or equipment or cranes to photograph it. But we managed to keep it on the boat for the most part. And there can only be, I think the number was 35 or 40 people on that boat by law in terms of the numbers. So that's
mm,
not a big film crew when you're thinking of a film this scale with 2 to 3 cameras on a boat. Uh, that's the core of what it was actually, that was the set, as it were. So I think that was an efficient way to work, and you get the reality of being on the water and the experiential reality of the actors actually being out there on the water. And I think that means something. And it's especially when you spend a lot of time on this boat in this movie, and you got to try and keep it visually interesting in some way. So that was how that went, which I was very happy with. And I thought Stephen Jones Evans did a beautiful job of the set, as he always does. So yeah, that was fun. And interestingly enough, we actually went to Brazil at the very end of the shoot. We'd always planned to do this to shoot plates
mm,
and to shoot just the world, as it were. And not a lot of that was used because so much of what we'd shot for plates in the Tweed River was actually very similar and actually in better light, because we had more time to do it. In Brazil, we only had a few days to work with what light there was there. So just shows you the suspension of disbelief, and sometimes the imitation is can be
yeah.
better than the real thing,
Yeah, no, I was convinced that it was the Amazon, to be honest with you. I was
Okay.
totally convinced.
I mean, there are
Um,
some there are some shots there of the Amazon, and you'll see them to sort of set it all up. But a lot of it is really, national park or Australian rainforest.
yeah. You talked about the number of boats that were there. I mean, that whole amazing scene when the Sony Rights thing kind of comes up and the big boat passes by. I thought that was hilarious because I wasn't expecting it. Was that, I'm assuming that was one of the boats that you guys were using?
Yeah, that was just our
Yeah.
crew. They were our crew boats. That was the green room for the actors, basically. Just going the other way, and that was our equipment boat, the slot boat, as it were. We So, and there were a lot of our crew on there as well, sort of being crew. Um, so in terms of the meta of it, it runs deep, you know, it's
Yeah. You talked about having like a backup set, going back to the swamp conversation. Did the actors know about the backup set or they were not informed unless necessary?
I don't think we actually went
Told them.
there. No, I think we were like, well, let's just see how we go here, you know, and go from there.
Because if you give them an option, they'll be like, okay, let's just go forget this.
100%. 100%. It's like a hotel room, you know what I mean? You're
Yeah,
going to take it. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, that was a very challenging, and actually that set flooded completely. It's a swamp. There was always going to be water, but up until days before we shot, we were like, we don't think we could shoot this because it was, neck deep. Uh, so it just shows, in Australia, the great thing about Australia is it's beautiful, but it's a very wet place, Queensland. It's a subtropical climate, and we had a lot of flooding. We had sets washed away.
Oh,
Yeah, we weathered a lot of rain. I actually had to leave the set a couple of days early because I had to come back for my visa at the time. And I had to drive through a rainstorm to get to the airport. It was ferocious, you know. But the crew are so hardy to it down there. It's like you work it out, and
yeah,
it's about being flexible, having a backup plan. Um, and we were lucky in that we didn't have a studio. Well, we made our own studio with a massive warehouse, in which we put the ship and some of the other sets. So we tried to build a schedule that would allow us to have somewhere to run if need be.
sure. That's awesome. One thing I really appreciated, and I talk about this on almost every film that I talk to a cinematographer, is the feel of the colors.
Mhm.
It had a very much Technicolor feel to it, like the way from 90s and 80s. I mean, it was not like that washed out, monotone like David Fincher style approach. And I really, really appreciated that. So with that in context, what cameras and lenses were utilized?
We that was all very deliberate. We wanted to create something that was timeless, that was speaking to the original movie, original film. Billy Butler, I believe, shot it, who's
Hmm.
the older school of the older school, and his does that very Hollywood painterly thing, I guess, that was almost at its height in that time, I find. Um, I was actually watching other films like Monos or like uh what was the other film I was really referencing? Something that
Trop.
Darius Conti had shot. Tropic Thunder, of course.
I was
Um,
gonna say Tropic Thunder.
Let me just have a look here. The Ruins. Yes, The Ruins is a film that Darius Conji shot, also in Australia,
Yeah,
and I felt that he had found a classicism that spoke to the 80s and 90s films in a modern time. So I was really looking at what he was doing and trying to go there as well. I worked closely with our colorist, Alex Bickle. We worked closely with his color scientists, and we recreated a lot that looked a lot like 9.3, like an old vision negative. I used E-series based anamorphic lenses, which were very much of the period. They may have even been what Billy Butler shot at the time. I can't quite remember. And then I shot Alexa 35, which is just my favorite camera in terms of anamorphic pairing and Alexa 35 for me is the most sophisticated digital negative in terms of retaining highlights, which was all about dealing with what nature had, and we didn't have a huge amount of control all the time. So I needed something that would capture a great negative with all the information with limited control at times. So that was the package, as it were. Um,
nice,
We shot
nice.
mostly two cameras, sometimes three. Uh, we had a style, or tried to develop a style. I mean, look, comedy is very dictating, especially in a four-hander comedy of this style, in terms of what you need to do to capture performance, what you need to do to capture what the actors will do off page, off script. And as a cinematographer, that means cross-shooting sometimes. That means meat and potatoes coverage sometimes. That means not moving the camera too much sometimes because you need to be able to capture the actor all the time.
Right.
I mean, not moving the camera, being revolving around someone, you need to, the timing of that and needing to be there for the joke to be able to give the cut enough to create the timing for the comedy. That's the complexities of photography for comedy. And it's something that it's taken me years to get my head around, and it's a lot of compromise, but I think it's a compromise and a good thing. You're there for the comedy
Right.
first, and you need to find a way to have a visual style, but first of all, addressing that without compromising too much on the visual. So it's that yin and yang, trying to give and take all the time about how to give it something, but but let it have its own life and let it capture the surprises, because the surprises in comedy are usually where the money and the gold is at.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. Coverage wise, that means that what you do is you try and create the visual angle in different parts of the scene, often in the establishes or the masters in the scene. Unfortunately, that's also the stuff that's the first stuff that gets cut out, and the cuts once, you know, it's about
Yeah.
time fitting it into a square box. So, there's a lot of heartache for me in terms of some of the beautiful stuff that's not in the movie, but that's just the nature of the beast in these things. And
It is.
that's what it is. You just try and have enough in there to be able to tell the story and keep it experiential for the audience in something like this as possible. And of course, the VFX bring so much to it. What was built with the snake and the suspense of all that. And I think Ireland did a beautiful job with the creature part of it. Yeah, that's
Yeah. First of all, I mean, I have an anamorphic 32-inch monitor, so I always get delighted whenever I'm trying to watch something and it's on my TV and I still have the black bars. So I'm like, okay, even though it's like the big screen, forget this. Let me
yeah,
go to my 32-inch and just we'll watch it there. So it's really cool because you just see everything, like you just all you see is the edges of the monitor, right? And that's it. And it's just so beautiful to watch. And this film deserved it. It just deserved the anamorphic, the colors and everything. Now you talked about VFX. Working with ILM or working on the set, tell me the process of that because from what I understood or what I saw, there were no puppetry. It seemed pretty, computer generated. And working around that with absolutely nothing there, or was there something there as a reference? Kind of like we talked about Lilo and Stitch
sure.
earlier this year. So talk about that, please.
Uh, well, it's interesting. There was at the beginning, there was some thought about building a snake, and there was a snake built, I think, that was going to be practical that we could use some of the time, maybe. Um, and then there was the blue snake, of course, which you shoot so that the actors have something that is of a similar size to interact with when they need to do such a thing. Um, but the puppet snake, as it were, was not used a lot. It was all digital, really, all replaced. And that's working with the visual effects supervisor, who was Fraser Churchill from ILM on this, and he was great at guiding us through that. Uh, it's pretty simple, really. It's when the characters interact with it, they're interacting with a blue chew or green chew. When the snake is moving through the forest or the bush, in this case, the jungle, you articulate some of the trees of its passage, and then some of that's VFX and added. So you do what you can to give the visual effects something real to work with is the key to it, I think. And you have to constantly visualize the snake there. So if you're shooting a plate for the snake, you need to shoot a plate that's going to be good for the snake when it eventually comes into fruition into the frame. So everything's calculated and considered in terms of you spend a lot of time, or you're lighting something that actually isn't there. You're lighting an environment in anticipation of this creature that will live in the frame eventually, and you have to imagine how the light would react to that creature in that environment, so that the visual effects people have something to work with that will allow them to make something great, but something also that fits into the reality of the environment. So yeah, it's just it's It's working very closely with the visual effects supervisor and the director in terms of uh, pre-visualizing what it's going to do when, that being the snake.
Yeah.
We did storyboarding, more storyboarding than sort of visual pre-visualization. Uh, and that was really good, I think. And it was something that um, just allowed us to see what it might be like, especially in terms of the final sequence of it all. And constructing that sequence was something that was created, recreated, changed. We finally got pages for that. Like, and that's why there's a joke in the film about it. It's Hollywood. They just don't know what the ending is until you make the
Yeah.
ending.
Which kind of felt like actually in some parts of the movie, by the way, just to put it out
100%.
there.
There's an intended slight hokiness to some of this, which is there in fun with what this is as a film and the
Yeah.
sort of everything around it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So we talked about visual effects, we talked about water. One of the things over the last 2.5 or 3 decades always been like it's very challenging to create visual effects water or visual effects in water. Obviously, times have evolved. But one of the things I noticed about this film is that anytime there was a killing by the anaconda, there were at least 2 or 3 times when you guys were under the water filming the whole wrap around and the squeezing of the bones and all that. Talk to me about that. Was that intentional underwater because you wanted to make it different than the original, or was it just something that was, and how did you overcome that, because that's not an easy thing to pull off.
sure. Well, I think from Tom's point of view and Kevin's, I think a lot of it was like, what is the scariest? He would always say to me, "What's the scariest version of this?" And I would often think, and we would think as a team, well, the water, being underwater, being attacked by a snake is one thing. Being attacked by a snake underwater is another, because the water is its realm. That's
Lives.
its place of comfort. It has complete control down there. You have no chance. So that is the scariest version of it often, I thought. So that was, and then just simply a lot of it takes place on the water or around water. So it made sense. Um, the cool thing about that is that when you get underwater, you can get away with more, I think, in terms of visual effects because movement's different and things can be a bit more abstracted, and that's okay because it's underwater. And our experience of being underwater is very imprecise because not very few of us have had a chance to be underwater and sit there and study it very carefully and really understand it. It's been usually a fleeting moment. So most of our understanding of what underwater is something we've constructed in our head. So it gives us, the filmmaker, a little bit more freedom, I think, when you go below the surface. And we tried to do some stuff. We built a lens that was specifically the snake's point of view lens, which we photographed a lot. We didn't use as much as I thought in the film, but that snake POV was often half sky, half water frame, which was talking about where it lives. And it comes from there and it looks up above and then it takes you back down there. And the height of that is perhaps in the swamp killing scene where we stay above water, but we only imagine what's happening down there.
Yeah.
And this is what horror is at its height, is you only show the audience as little as possible and imbue as much as possible because our imaginations are far more powerful than any camera in our or any effect at our disposal. That's the Jaws theorem. And I think we applied that all the time here. It's like, well, do we need to see it? How much of it do we need to see? How much of it can we imbue? And then is that enough? Because that conversation can run away with itself and it's like, well, we don't need anything here. It's fine. We can just have the sound. But that's not enough either. So, it was about seeing it very little. When we see seeing it as a very incredibly powerful, fast thing, like the kill that happens of the PA by the water, by the water's edge, who's screaming, and then she's taken. That is one of the best I find because you really see violence there, and it's a bit like, oh God, this is for real. So, um, Yeah, it's just choosing your moments with these things, making sure that the moments you show are at the height of their prowess, the strongest, the toughest, the fastest, the most powerful, and just show it very little. And then, see the reaction of the actor rather than the actual source of the fright first, is often a great theorem as well, because that can be scary. What they're doing is often more impactful than what the thing is that they're reacting to. Um,
Yeah. Less is
yeah.
less is more, right? I mean, we talked about Jaws, but for some reason on my social media feed lately, I have been exposed to leopard and alligator fights. And
Well,
and it's just amazing how I'm trying to change my algorithm because it's all I see. But it's interesting whenever they have a fight, they both go underwater. Somebody's randomly filming, no clue what's going on, so you don't know who's gonna come up on top, and that makes it more exciting. That makes it more engaging. As opposed to there was one thing that I saw where somebody had underwater cameras, and it just didn't feel the same, right? Like took it away from that whole um, not knowing what's going to happen, who's going to come on top. So really, really cool. And there was a scene. I don't remember the dialogue. I Paul Rudd when he comes right in front of the camera on the boat and he says something. I like it was like a really, really tight shot. This was
Jet
like I
Black.
think. Sorry.
Jet Black.
No, it was Paul Rudd, I think. Was it Jack Black? Oh, you will know better.
I
I,
can't
I,
remember the moment. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not.
but I think it was Paul Rudd, and I thought the way he came in front of the camera, I should have jotted this down and just kind of delivered this line was really, really cool, and it just, he was trying to talk to the audience essentially. Now I should have jotted that down, so I'll move on from there because I can't remember. Um, when
Well, maybe something. I mean, what we did talk about a lot with Tom, and something that, in terms of our coverage, was like actors making their own close-ups. Like, instead of the camera moving into the actor for the close-up, finding a way to block the actor to move into the camera for their close-up, and that's a very Spielbergian thing. And we're tipping a hat to a lot of Spielberg things here, because that was very much his
well,
realm. So
that's what
maybe
it
that's
is.
that you're referring to, but and Paul's very good at this. He understands camera, he understands blocking, he knows timing. He can do that in a way that doesn't feel like he's been told to go and stand in front of the lens now at this moment. So, kudos to him for pulling that off. But that is something, we try and design blocking that is interesting, but doesn't rely on the camera signposting to deliver that coverage. What I mean by that is, the classic 3 foot push, which is like da da da, which we try and not go there unless it's absolutely right for that moment. And try and do the same thing but in different ways. And in this case, it's the actor doing the work for us.
Yeah. I'm not gonna, I mean, the way the film that ends and they're in a particular city, if you know what I mean. I thought that was really, really nice and intimate as opposed to like this grand, Cannes or, Venice or Academy Awards. And that's close to where I live. It's like an hour and a half away. So it was really, really cool to see that you guys kind of kept it kind of like a B movie kind of an approach, like that has an audience, and then the reaction of everybody while they were watching it. I thought it was really well executed, and even like the behind the scenes stuff in the beginning when they start shooting. I mean, that was a delight to watch. It was really, really fun to watch that.
Yeah, the EPK, as you call it. So that was all done during the reshoot period. So Tom had this idea, oh, we need this to be able to pepper through the film, to have this kind of see them having fun doing this thing as well. So I think that worked out really well. In terms of the buffalo of it all, you're talking about, that was we tried to keep that tangible, realistic. Like, it could be anyone. Like, it could, like, these people really existed. You watch the real Anaconda, the original Anaconda, sorry, and these characters are superhuman in a way, but we tried to start with characters that felt real. And the same of Paul's experience in LA. He was on a tough trajectory as an actor in LA, and we tried to show that side of it. So um, yeah, it was that was trying to imbue the hope in the film and the everyman sort of message of it. And I think that that was successful. So yeah, thank you. That was actually in its original creation, that was actually a lot more downscale Buffalo than's in the movie, but we had to sort of bring it up a little bit because that's the playing field we're on, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, these were real characters. They're supposed to be real characters with real lives and real, you know, humble American town, you know, in the snow and the sleet, dreaming of what they could do in this other place. And I think, you know,
yeah.
Kenny is he impersonated that so well. He, you know, you really his character lived in that world so well, I think, and
He
then
did.
stepped incredibly well when he hit the river.
No, I mean, like I said earlier, like this whole, the wedding video versus wedding film, it's like one of those insecurities a lot of people in that industry had. Like I remember when I was sort of on the other side of the realm. I was in the film world, but we used to talk about wedding video, no, 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 wedding film, and I just cannot get over that how accurate. I don't know if the writers experienced that themselves in their lives, but it was just so damn accurate. It was so damn accurate. Sorry, I can't get over that because it was so relatable, and that goes back to what you said. The characters are very sort of like grounded in
Grounded.
terms of
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they were doing. What's next for you? Are you working on anything exciting?
Uh, at the moment, I'm gonna about to go into a pilot, I think. So nothing larger scale just yet, but just kind of picking my moment there and trying to find the right thing. Yeah,
I, I hate to bring this up, but because this happened yesterday, have you seen the new Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt AI fight?
no,
Oh, you should see it.
I'll have a look at it. Okay.
Variety even did an article about it because I think it was some Chinese AI video generator, and they're just fighting on top of a rooftop, and from the skin tones to facial expressions to the voice, it's crazy how accurate that was. Yes, it's AI, but I'm always wondering like how people sort of it's a hot topic. Everybody talks about it, right? So I was wondering if you had seen it, but if you haven't, go check it out. It will blow your mind away.
I will. I mean, it's frightening.
It is very frightening. It is very frightening, but it is what it is. What can you do unless there's some copyright infringements and regulations that are set in place, then it's
Mm.
gonna be a lot of work that's gonna be lost and a lot of art and skill set that's gonna be lost, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides of that coin, but it's going to be very difficult to talk a studio and an audience into it otherwise. You know?
I agree. I agree. While we sort of wrap this up, Academy Awards are coming up. You've seen a lot of films. From a cinematography standpoint, something that you appreciated a lot and why that you've
Well,
seen this year.
sure. Look, Weapons was the highlight for me in terms of cinematography.
Hmm.
Found that film so deft and accurate in its representations and its choices, even though it was very much a genre horror movie. It lived in a space that was from a camera, mise en scène, directorial decisions. You know, for a humble film, it did something really superb, I think. Um, and then on the Oscar level, you know, one battle for me is the pick in terms of cinematography. I've always loved PT's work, and this is right up there. You know, the the work on that film, the work of the operator Colin Anderson and Mike Bauman, the DP. It's at once looks absolutely simple, and I know how complex that is. And to see that aesthetic on the big Hollywood screen in this sort of slightly unkept world, and how timely. I mean, it's almost like he was looking into the future when remember he was making that film
Yeah,
10, 12 months before all this stuff was going down, and it's so right on and accurate that I mean, props. It's one of the greatest. It's what I love seeing happening on the Hollywood stage, put it that way. It's something
yeah.
that's still has a real artistic life and a real message, and is just beautifully made.
I mean, the whole the finale scene, the car, the highway sequence, and all that. But I was listening to a podcast or read somewhere that he, for certain scenes, they just used two basic lights, like very basic lights. And I mean, you look at the film, and you don't see that because the story is so enriching, the characters are so enriching that you just overlook all that stuff and you don't even notice it. So yeah, it definitely for me that and then completely flip side of that was Frankenstein, Guillermo
Yeah,
del
sure.
Toro's,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That was really cool. Awesome. Any last bit of information that I overlooked on Anaconda that you want to share? Anything?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. I think, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. I will tell you, I was looking at yesterday, one last thing. I looked at the box office for Anaconda, the one that you worked on. I think yesterday I saw it was 131 million worldwide or something. And then I looked at the original. It was around 133, 135 million worldwide.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
yeah. So you're right there up there with the original in terms of numbers at least.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, congratulations. Well, thank you so much, Nigel. I appreciate your time. I hope to talk to you soon. And if I'm in LA and you're around, I would love to grab a coffee with you, man.
100%. 100%.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Take care,
Take
mate.
care.
Bye bye.
You too, buddy. Bye bye.